Keeping a bit of pressure on the dantian, so sort of pushing the hand in a bit. Forcing the muscles just to contract slightly. So when I work with my students, we do those leaning exercises, where we're sort of leaning into each other. And one person will have their fist on the other person's dantian, and that person will be leaning in. So they're giving their body weight to that fist. So the dantian area has to really tighten to protect itself. And it is remarkable how just unified the person's energy becomes. You almost get a feeling they could lift their feet off the ground and just be suspended by the fist. So everything is drawn towards this center, including the legs, or especially the legs, really. So the dantian is always pulling into itself. It's like a constant, a background constant. Okay, so now let's just try a bit with the stick. And so the reason it's slow is because we are creating resistance to the movement. With our mind. So just feel the stick. It's something you can rely upon, and it's also something you can fight. So our engagement with the real is something of a tussle. And then just a few. So here, just really feeling the two sides of the body. One side is contracting, and there's a mood associated with that of sort of withdrawal and sort of meanness. And the other side is stretching, sort of opening out into the world. So one side closing, one side opening. So two very different moods inhabiting the body at the same time. So we don't want to just merge them into a general mood. We want to just really feel the dual aspect, the Taoist structure of the real. So let's now just try. Let's just try pushing it up and down a bit. So really feeling the back arching, the lower back. The front of your body is coming up, the back of your body is pulling down. And then here you're pulling the stick down as though it's being held up, so you really have to give it a good pull. This is your belly contracting, your back is expanding. Just imagine it's much more difficult than it really is. And then here I have to really contract to pull that stick down. And now just pulling and pushing. And then just pushing. And pulling. So again, this is the lower back, tightening in order to pull the arms apart. And then pushing, and then this is the belly tightening to push the hands towards each other. Okay, so now let's just try a bit of that one where we slip down the back, because this is important just for opening the shoulders a bit. Okay, so now let's just like putting a hand down, just feeling the floor and just letting it drain. So the ground as sink rather than the ground as stable support. So it's earthing me, it's draining my energy, my surplus. And then the other side. Okay, so now let's just feel the three centers, the three dantians. So the lower dantian, yeah, the one we're used to. So this sense of it being just a muscle really that's pulling into itself all the time. A gravitational center that's sucking every part of me towards it, albeit gently. And then the upper dantian is basically the midbrain. So the main way of focusing on that or bringing some sense of coherence to it is with the tip of the tongue on the roof of the mouth. So just pressing the tongue up into the highest part of the palate and just directing that tongue into the middle of the brain. And it's sort of further back than you think it is. So it's nothing to do with this part, with the frontal brain. So that's something you can, it's the same with the dantian, you can sort of have the mind here, just clenching a little all the time. And the same with here, it's just get into the habit of having the tip of the tongue on the roof of the mouth all the time when you're not speaking. So there's a sense of like circulation. It's like the tongue is just driving energy up, and then it goes down the back of the head and around like this. So there's a circuit like this, yeah. The same way there's a circuit this way, yeah, in the front brain, but we don't worry too much about that. So it's always figures of eights. You've got two circuits, both going in different directions, but in slightly different adjacent parts of the body. And then just feel the heart. So the heart is more complex because it's a little bit of this and it's a little bit of this. It's like a intermediary. So we want to feel the two aspects of the heart. The deep lower heart, which is like the feminine heart. It's the part that draws in. It's the part that accepts and loves. So by drawing in, it surrounds, yeah? So it's sort of funneling in like this all the time. And it's sort of receding and it's also sinking. So it's very much of the dantian. It's drawing in and down into the dantian. So these two centers, the lower heart and the dantian are very much part of one thing, if you like. Yeah. And then the upper heart, which is like the opposite of the lower heart. So if the lower heart is the deepest part of your actual chest, your physically, the part that dips in the most. Yeah. So just above the cartilage. Yeah. Then the upper heart is the part of your sternum that rears out the most. So the proud sternum that's jutting up. And that's thymus. Yeah. So that is very much of the head, not the thinking head, the head that's stimulated by the tongue in the roof of your mouth. Yeah. And so this part of your heart is sort of lifting up and infusing the head. And the lower part of your heart is sinking down and filling out the dantian. So the upper heart is the masculine part, if you like, the part that is brave and foolhardy, takes risks and fights, basically, contends with the world. Okay, and now let's just try that heart qigong as a means of integrating these centers. So just reaching out with the hands and just bringing the world into your lower heart and just letting that dip down into the belly. And then up from the belly through the lower heart, then it jumps into the thymus and the thymus reaches up. And the head almost explodes as this fountain of energy comes out of it and cascades all around you. So just reaching. So this is like the mother that's beckoning the crying child to come into her arms. And she draws the child into her breast. Dips down into the belly. And then slowly. And you just want to feel that click as it sort of jumps from the lower heart into the upper heart. They're almost incompatible. They're sort of complementary opposites. So just keep the tip of the tongue on the roof of the mouth. And then one more. And then just feel it. Dwell in the feeling. Okay, so let's stand and do a little bit. Okay, so let's just start by doing the figure of 8 around the hips. Yeah, so what we have to be careful of is that when we work, we don't have this circuit going. It's the other circuit. So just really feeling the figure of 8 drooping down the back of your leg and cutting under the foot. So we root through the heel. So the back of the foot, the heel, is quite small and sort of narrow. So there's a feeling that it can penetrate the earth, it can go in. The front of your foot, a bit like a duck, the front of your foot is wide. And so it will sort of settle on the surface like a snowshoe. And your heel can actually penetrate. So like when you stand on wet sand, the heel goes deeper into the sand than the front of your foot does. So this is what we want to feel, that when we're standing, our back is sort of sliding down and our front, relatively speaking, is rising up. And it's the same when you're sitting. When you're sitting, you're rooting through your sitting bones. And there's a sense that your back is sliding down and your front is sort of lifting up. It's difficult because when we concentrate on something, we tend to come forwards into the front brain, and that sort of falls down like this. And feeling the ground in its dual aspects. So the aspect we're most aware of is the support that it gives us, especially in man-made environments, like the street. It's flat and it's even relatively, and it's hard. Whereas most natural surfaces, natural ground surfaces are not that hard. They may be covered in grass or be loose soil or sand. So it's only really when human beings have passed by that the path becomes beaten and packed. So we want to feel the ground as being an inviting place to go into, not just to settle upon. Because my root, just like a plant's root, it goes into the ground. It doesn't just, so the plant isn't just settled on top of the ground. And the higher, the taller, the stronger the plant wants to get, the more it has to extend roots down into the ground. So it's the same model, the same image that we work with. Something in me is slipping down and extending into the ground. If I just feel the ground as a hard surface, then I'm compacted all the time. My lower back becomes a little bit crushed. I want to feel that I can just release my sacrum, my hips, and just extend energetically down my back and through the heel and into the earth. Yeah, so I want to develop a softness. In a way, it's the most important quality in Tai Chi, softness. But I want to develop a softness that softens. It's not just me that's becoming softer, it's the world I inhabit. So my softening of myself softens the things I touch and encounter. Okay, so let's just bring it to riding horse. Yeah, so this same feeling here. Yeah, so there's always a temptation to do this, to sort of bring your concentration to your own body, your own space. And that we normally think of as being in front of us here. So what I want is to be more with my sacrum that's just hanging down. So when the sacrum is really allowed to hang, then it will want to come forwards. Now it can't come forwards because I want to be in the heels, so it will tend to make the upper back lean back a little bit, which is why my arms need to reach out. So from the min meng down, so those bottom two vertebrae and then the top of the sacrum is vertical. That's the part of your spine that needs to be vertical. And then because the sacrum has got this lovely curve, because the top part of the sacrum is vertical, the bottom part will just cut under gently. So when you get that, when you get the back sliding down, then there's just a natural sort of lightness and lift like a cheerful sort of misty sort of brightness that comes up the front here. So my sinking produces a rising. And in a sense, everything about this rising is the opposite of the sinking. So if I try and just feel the qualities of that sinking, you know, it's quite sort of cold and detached and heavy. Then all of this is just the opposite of that, dark. So what's going down is dark. It's searching for the darkness, subterranean. It's part of me that becomes that subterranean seriousness that Nietzsche talks about. And then this is just bright and light, yeah? It's cheerful. Okay, now let's just come forward. So coming onto the front of the foot. So it's like we come into that light, misty brightness that's rising up in front, and I become infused with it. So I'm lifting my heels, but I've still got a sense of a root going down. It's just no longer going through the heels. It's just dropping into the front of the foot. So I still want to keep the sense that my sacrum is dropping and going down through my body. Because all the time, I want to produce positions that I can sustain. And for that, I really need balance. Yeah? So I have to be able to maintain this situation and endure it for duration, for time. It's not just a fleeting thing that passes by. I really want to dwell here. And just feel what that dwelling involves. So to dwell is to abide comfortably in a way. To just be able to just be happy, to be content in the situation you are. And then just rocking back into the heels, but one at a time. So just turn in order to extend the heel backwards, and then turn back to cut it under, and then turn this way to extend this heel back, and then turning back to the front to cut under. So again, it's just a figure of 8. And then I'm back in the heels, sinking down my back. So just feel the dantian just drawing in. It's in a way, it sort of stops you getting lost in the energy, in the feeling. It's like a reminder. It's like in the back of your mind, you know, ugh. And then just coming onto the front of the foot again. Again, get this real feeling you're coming into this rising brightness. and it's just transforming you. It's like the sun's come out. You know, when the sun comes out and suddenly, way, you're not quite as depressed anymore. Keeping the sacrum heavy, hanging through. So when the sacrum hangs, it has to give you that feeling of your back stretching from the min meng down. Yes, it's part of us that's normally sort of compressed and crushed by the ignorance and the violence with which we step when we walk. Yeah, partly also because we've created these hard surfaces for us to walk on, which enables us to be careless and stupid. And then just rocking back again, so one at a time. So I turn this way a little bit, I hook under with the heel, and then I turn this way, hook under with the heel, and I'm back into riding horse. So if you can, always doing one side first, because then it will just give the body that feeling that it's two things in balance rather than just one thing. Feeling my sacrum splitting down each leg. It's like my root starts really at my sacrum. My leg is actually a root. It's as though the ground is here. And my legs are like two roots that then extend from the sole of the foot even further, and the toes and the bubbling well. It's like there's a little root that comes out of each one of them. Soft like ice about to melt. So it's such a well-considered and accurate description of softness. It's from the Tao Te Ching. So, you know, in physics, you know, you've got the solid, like ice, that melts, yeah? And so in order for that to happen, the ice needs to receive energy, what they call the latent heat of melting, yeah? And so, and it's a lot of energy, yeah? Which is why, like, meat takes so long to thaw, yeah? So for it to actually leave that frozen state takes a long time. And then once it's left that frozen state, it will heat up quite quickly, yeah? Because there's a lot of energy involved in changing phase, changing from solid to liquid or from liquid to gas. So in physics, to change phase to a higher phase from solid to liquid or from liquid to gas, it requires an input of energy. Now for us, it's more like it just requires an opening, a letting go. Ugh, something in me just has to stop holding on to that state, to stop holding on to the solidity, which I assume reality to be, yeah, and just allow that to just become fluid. So, in other words, to become infused with movement, but a movement that is in flows rather than just a random Brownian motion type movement, which is what a gas would be. So something in me flows down, like just liquid flowing onto the sand. You know, it hits the sand and instantly it's inside. It's trickling down into the depths. Yeah. So I'm on a soft, gravelly, sandy surface, and my melting is actually going all the way down as deep as possible. And to maintain that, to keep that going, you just have to keep the movement going. Yeah, you just have. So basically, these sort of figures of eights, it's not just an exercise that we're just trotting around. It's real. Yeah, there's these flows that are just rippling and trickling, and but in the middle of that, you are still. So your stillness, your stilling, allows the world to move. It's like, like when you become quiet. If you're sitting in nature, if you decide to sit in nature, take your cushion into the fields and just sit, the nature will just come out and expose itself. You'll see the little mice and the stoats and the birds. So it's my quieting that allows the world, it doesn't just allow it, it encourages it, that this is what we want to feel. We make the world a better place. We don't just make ourselves better people. It's not selfish. And now let's just doing the figure of eight, but getting the foot to come off the ground a little bit. So I go into the heel, and then as I go around the front of the foot, my heel actually comes up. So the foot is actually working. So like it's a real sort of wrestly action that you're doing on the ground. And if you were like on grass or sand, then you'd really be making a mess. Your feet would really be churning up the surface. And as you come onto the front of the foot, just be really careful you don't let the sacrum come up and tip forwards. So, and just in a sense, for me, the sacrum is a bit like your plowshare, the part of the plow that digs the ground, that cuts into the ground. So your sacrum, when it's not angled back like this, is cutting into the ground all the time. So there's a sense that it's cutting under here. So we don't want the action of the knee coming up and the heel coming up to push the sacrum back. It's just helping the sacrum get into the front of the foot. Just really feeling the wrestly quality of the feet. Like you're sort of standing barefoot in mud and you're just trying to get the mud all the way around the toes, squelching through the toes, between the toes. Yeah, so when we lift the heel, we don't come up. We slide down into the front of the foot. Okay, so let's bring it back. Again, getting this feeling that this is dropping down and cutting under your feet. So there's a feeling that your tail is in the ground, pointing forwards. Okay, now let's just try a bit of the walking. So basically this figure of 8, the simple one, is in operation when we do the walking, especially when we start it. So what I want to do is be really careful that when I put my heel down, I don't bang, because if I do, then this area will crush up a bit. So I put the heel down, and then I just go around, like I'm going around the outside edge of the foot into the toes. That enables the other foot to come up, and then this one, just the heel. I want to feel that as my heel approaches the ground, this part just really melts down the back of the leg. Almost like the ground is sucking the heel down. And then I really gently lower myself into it. And again, I'm turning like this to get around the foot. Yeah. So I'm yielding into the foot. And really gently. So that my back is extending down the leg as the heel touches the ground, not crushing up away from the ground. And just, so just don't worry too much about, how many steps to get around the circle, because it's not Bagua. Bagua is a fighting art. It's very different. We're doing this just to sort of to feel the quality of the stepping. So I have a sort of fondness for this walking because it's one of the last things that me and John worked on before I left. So what he was adamant about was that when the heel hits the ground, it's not because I've lowered that leg, it's because I've bent the other leg, the leg that is supporting me. I lower myself with that, and then I can touch the ground, but really softly. So here it's this leg bending that takes the foot down. So there's a sense that as the heel hits the ground, it's already pulling. It's drawing the ground so that that point of contact, that moment of impact, can be as gentle as possible. Yeah? So here I'm bending this leg, and ooh. So it's almost like just really savoring that moment when the heel touches the ground. So ooh. So mindful and careful. Yeah, so because I'm bending this leg to go down, there's a sense that the ground is rising towards this foot. So the ground is coming up to meet me. And just feeling all the different facets. You know, so how many different stages are there? You know, just keep the sacral area. So what by that I mean the sort of min meng down. Keep it flat and back. Yeah. So a lot of Tai Chi, it's really just got to keep your weight as far back as possible. And you do that by just keeping tone in the dantian largely. So this is drawing in, and that enables my body to stay back. So the ground is always something I'm going into rather than something I'm just settling on top of. I'm just trying to get in with my plowshare, with the bottom of my sacrum and my tail. So I want this to dig down and under the ground. And if I lose the concentration, then basically I'll just come on top of the ground again and I'm rolling around like a ball or a scurrying insect. So I just really want to feel that softness that enables me to penetrate down and under. And that just requires quiet mind. Basically, if you have a root, then you can't have a noisy mind. Because that surplus activity, that excess that's going on in the head is just drained out of you by the sink of the ground, the earth. Okay, so that's basically, that would be like Jung style. So this idea that you yield in order to do something. So the yielding just brings you together with the thing that you're interacting with, and allows a connection. So as I feel the ground, I'm yielding to it as I touch it, and then I just melt into it. I fuse with it. That's the feeling. So I remember when Nitzan introduced the Chen style pushing hands to us about 1991, I think it was. So there was a new concept introduced, which was this idea of entering. This idea that you're just a bit too late. If you wait for the thing to reach you and then you melt, it's just a bit too late. Yeah. What we really want is to go towards the thing. And then at that point of making contact, that's when you melt. So Nitzan used to practice that with his students using medicine balls. Remember medicine balls from the gym at school? So these large, I mean, the ones he used weren't actually that big. There's one in the other room, actually. But these leather-clad heavy balls, you know, the ones we had at school, maybe they weren't that big. Maybe it was me that was small. But they were big, and we had to lift them up and march around. So what I used to do is get partners, get them throwing these medicine balls to each other. So as this ball came hurtling towards you, once it had been pitched by the person you were working with. So what you had to do, just to manage it, to handle it, was to really reach towards it as it was coming in. And as soon as you touched it, you just go with its momentum, bring it in, and then just reroute its momentum and throw it back. So just pure Tai Chi or Aikido. And so you reach forwards and then just connect with the momentum. And then slowly it loses momentum. And then you can just add a little bit of your own and throw it back, yeah? So that became for us, you know, yielding. It required that entering before you then melt, yeah? And it's such a beautiful quality, this feeling of going in, but you're going in knowing that you're going to be coming out again. So you're not just going in brashly and stupidly. You're going in really gently and softly. So you're really sort of angling yourself so that you can sidle in. And then in order to make sure that your impact is really soft and gentle, you're instantly turning back the other way as soon as there's even a hint of connection. So that's what we want to try now with the stepping. So basically what it just becomes the figure of 8 going around the foot like this, yeah. So as I now incorporate the reaching out of my foot with the actual yield. So now my foot is reaching out as though into this softness, and then I just draw in. So the foot is going out, but as soon as the toes hit the ground, it's pulling back like that. And that pull back is actually what draws my body forwards, yeah? So I'm just reaching out and just touching the ground with my toes so gently. And then I just go around the foot in a figure of 8, and that just draws me into the foot. So it's lovely because it's got this, it gives you this real sense that your reaching out is actually yielding. It's already yielding. You don't actually have to turn back. I mean, you do turn back, but you turn back really to draw yourself forwards. And again, using the supporting leg to lower yourself down. And you can really feel like the little toe, because it's the little toe that sort of wants to go out first and the most. And then you go around into the big toe and then cutting back into the outside of the heel. So, ooh, and ooh. And it's lovely as well because it sort of cushions the toes, and the ball of the foot sort of cushion the descent of the heel. And then I can really concentrate not so much on my weight coming into the heel, but on the heel actually penetrating the ground like a hypodermic needle. And I can just, wow, I can get right down. Yeah, so as I reach out with my left foot, I'm turning to the right in order to sidle, in order to get my side facing forwards. Keep the danchen a little bit contracted. So that's like the maintaining the intensity, really. So the mind continuous. So it's like an unbroken thread. As soon as it snaps, I leak energy and I have to start all over again. Yeah, so we're feeling the immense richness, the phenomenological density of the exercise. So just trying to just really attend to every aspect. So very different from the way science works, which tends to simplify all the time in order to make the maths easy, or in order to make the maths doable. Because most natural systems don't lend themselves to mathematical analysis. So here we're just feeling, and this is the problem with the figure of 8 in a way. It's a bit like a mathematical approximation. So we're always trying to feel the figure of 8 as being a natural thing rather than just this shape that we've imposed upon what it is that we're doing. So just feeling how, oh yeah, it does take that pathway. I don't have to make it happen. If I'm just yielding and softening, but staying really intensely awake, then it will naturally travel around a figure of 8. And you just continue until it's taken you somewhere you've never been before, until you start uncovering things that you hadn't realized were there. It's a bit like treasure hunting. Yeah, and this is just, basically everything that we practice, really. We're very limited by the format, because we can't really do the form because of the Zoom format. So we just do these simple exercises, but they can all be incorporated into the form. So this is the idea. Yeah, so next time you do the form, it should be different because it's informed by this. Yeah, so if I just really want to get down here, then I just have to really stay behind the leg. Yeah, if I'm on the leg like this, then I'm going to hurt the knee. I just really want the feeling that I can slip down the back of the foot and really reach down. I'm just really watching how the weight comes into the foot. If I have any sense of this happening, then I've lost it. I've got to get under. So it's like I'm coming into the foot from underneath almost, because I'm scooping down here and underneath rather than coming on top. And you can really practice that in the form. Bring it back to riding horse. Our old friend, the horse. So again, just feel the min meng. Yeah, so your mind should go there as naturally as it goes into the dan qian. And in a sense, as easily as just putting the tongue on the roof of the mouth. I mean, that's so simple. You just have to stick it there. And so this feeling here of the min meng. So what's beneath the min meng? So the bottom vertebra and a half, really. And the top of the sacrum is just hanging down. These muscles just need to be strong enough to support that, so that when I'm standing, I'm not distracted by the pain here. I can really attend with my mind to the sinking down the back, down my back and down my buttocks and down the back of my legs. And then into the heels, behind the heels, getting under. So just a sense that my body is behind my legs. It's really important. Yeah, so there's something, so we just want to just really feel the mindset of standing. I mean, for me, this is the thing that John didn't stress enough, was standing. Partly because if he had, he'd have lost all his students, because people don't like it. So I'm going down the backs of my legs. These pockets here, the leg pits, are really opening up. And so feel it, when you open, really open here, it will tend to stick the tail back. So there's a balance. There's a balance between your tail hanging heavily and these closing off. So these having to open. So it's like there are these different dimensions that you exist in that are sort of confronting each other and oscillating, vibrating. And yesterday I was reading this American poet called George Quasher. And that's exactly how he defined poetry. Poetry is the oscillation between different dimensions. So poetically man dwells. And it just really just means energetically, really, but just that sort of, that spirit energy that enlivens everything. Yeah, so when you're it's like a warrior exercise. So the warrior, what distinguishes a warrior from a normal person is that the warrior knows he has no choice. Is that beautiful phrase of Harold Hardrada, the Viking warrior who was killed at Stamford Bridge in 1066. So he announced, I have no choice. I have only an imperative. Yeah, so he's obeying orders. He has an order. So what makes spiritual warriors is the fact that that imperative comes from within. There's something inside you that just drives you on through the pain, through the suffering, through the sacrifice. And it's just eminently unpopular nowadays because there's so many, we've managed to make life so enjoyable that people will not choose to suffer, unless it's for like become a great sports person to get millions and millions. Yeah. So the spiritual imperative, forget self and become one with the Tao, is just non-existent now. Okay, and now just bringing it up. So just keep tone here. You really have to hold on to something to bring that foot up. And now just straightening the legs, but with a real sense that your heels, the more you straighten the legs, the more it drives your heels into the ground. So a feeling that your back is just sliding down an inch or so. So you still have your root is still in the ground. And there's a sense that this is sort of rising up. So your front rises relatively to your back, which is sinking. So feeling the heels, like you're standing on sand and the heels are just really digging in. And the front of your foot is really opening out and spreading so that it can stay on the surface. And so the calves need to be well stretched, flexible. So that squatting exercise is really, really good. So let's just try just a couple of minutes. So just going down and just really feeling the heels digging into the ground. I've got a real circuit like this going on that's threatening to make me fall backwards. So my heels are just digging in. My belly is tight, so there's a circuit going on in the dantian as well, which is the same circuit as is going on in my whole body. So this is, when we do the form, we know it so well now that you want the feeling that your attention is with the lower body, is with your relationship with the ground, especially the part of you that is in the ground, your root. And the upper body just sort of takes care of itself. You don't have to worry about arms anymore because they know where they should go. So the heel is extending back and hooking under all the time. So when I turn this way to yield, it's hooking my heel under and up the other person. So I'm letting their energy come in at the same time that I'm undermining them and coming underneath. Let's just bring it back to here. And just that same feeling, so the heels cutting under. It's a real sort of radical shift to the way that we normally are. Because we're normally coming down onto the world. Like when we eat our food, it's like this. When we're reading a book, it's like this. Or even when we're watching TV, there's this sense, And so here we're getting down the back and into the ground. And then the world that I encounter is just enlivened. It's sort of, I clear myself so that the world can present itself unhindered by my depression, which nowadays we all have. So again, it's like the warrior. It's like the warrior who confronts the opponent in such a way that he brings out the best in the opponent, rather than trying to get an advantage by putting the opponent at a disadvantage. He just rears up, and so it's a matter of honor. It's an honorable confrontation. May the best man win. Yeah, and it's difficult. So active sinking. So passive sinking would be simply releasing these muscles a little bit to let my legs bend. So active sinking means tensing the hamstrings and my buttocks to actually pull me down into the ground. So I'm using the backs of my legs to fight the front of the legs. And then I'll really get under. Your mind has to be really tough and determined to actually get into the ground properly.